Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nathan Bray and I'm a social psychologist. It has come to my attention that there has been an increased number of reported incidences of crimes and injuries that have been witnessed by multiple people, yet no one provides assistance. As a social psychologist, media outlets have contacted me in order to explain and describe this phenomenon known as the bystander effect, why it occurs, and how helping behavior can be encouraged. The first important question here is, what is the bystander effect? Fisher and colleagues 2011 defined the bystander effect as a phenomenon that an individual's likelihood of helping decreases when passive bystanders are present in a critical situation. Fisher et al. 2011 name a few of the important, devastating real-life cases which exemplify this effect, that of which include Kitty Genovese and Dominic Brunner. Kitty Genovese was murdered and raped in Queens, New York in 1964. 37 to 38 witnesses reported hearing or witnessing the attack, but none chose to intervene or call the police until it was already too late. Dominic Brunner was murdered at a German train station more recently in 2009 after he tried to help children who were being attacked by two 18-year-old criminals. Several people walked past and witnessed the murder taking place, but no one stopped to physically intervene, and Dominic was killed as a result. This leads us to ask how and why this happens. Why does the bystander effect occur? Latine and Daly, 1969 and 1976, suggest that there are three key contributions which help to explain why the bystander effect occurs. These three factors include diffusion of responsibility, audience inhibition, and social influence. Diffusion of responsibility is the tendency of an individual to assume that others will take responsibility when the size of a group increases. This often leads to no one taking responsibility at all. Audience inhibition is the dread of acting inappropriately or of making a foolish mistake which may be witnessed by other people. This desire to avoid ridicule hinders an effective response to an emergency situation by members of a group. Lastly, social influence is the process where onlookers create a model of action. If onlookers are passive and unworried, it may create the perception that things are not that serious. It can also form a temporary group with an established norm of not to get involved or not to offer assistance. So, when is a bystander effect most likely to occur? Clark and Word 1972 suggests that most emergencies begin as ambiguous events. Onlookers often look to nearby bystanders for guidance or social cues before acting, so if onlookers are passive in an emergency scenario, their behavior can be misinterpreted and the situation can be seen as non-serious. So, as previously discussed, Latine and Daly 1969 and 1976 note that diffusion of responsibility plays an important role because one is likely to help an individual if they are by themselves. But as group size increases, the responsibility is shared amongst more people, therefore resulting in no one helping. Lastly, Ross and Braband 1973 and Vaughan and Hogg 2014 suggests that when an individual experiences a reduced sense of responsibility, they are less likely to help than when they're in a situation where they feel more personally responsible. For example, a person you know or a situation taking place at your own home. It is important to note that there are also other factors at play that may influence one's ability to help or fail to help in an emergency situation. Poliavan et al. 1981 suggests that the bystander calculus model is a series of important physiological and cognitive processes which calculate whether or not someone will help in an emergency situation. Poilievre and colleagues 1981 suggest that this model consists of three calculations before a response takes place. First, an individual is physically aroused by another's distress. Second, this arousal is labeled as an emotion. Third, the consequences of helping are evaluated. In addition, Poilievre and colleagues 1981 state that people are more likely to help or act pro-socially if the perceived benefits of helping outweigh the costs of not helping. Latney and Daly 1968 and 1969 suggest that decision-making is also an important factor as people may not be able to help. They may not notice the problem, they may hesitate, they may believe that the costs of helping are too much, or they don't feel personally responsible. The following factors also contribute to whether a person will help or not during an emergency situation. Competence. Charles and Court, 1970, suggests that people who are competent in an emergency scenario are more likely to help than someone who is not competent. Gender. Past research conducted by Eagley and Crowley, 1986, has indicated that men are more likely to help than women. Time pressure. Vaughan and Hogg, 2014, suggests that people are less likely to help if they are running late to something important, for example, an important meeting. Mood states. According to Alice Eisen, 1970, people are more likely to help when they're in a good mood than when they're in a bad mood. This is because when people are in a good mood, they experience a warm glow of success, which increases the chance of someone helping. Lastly, we have towns versus cities. Galfand et al. 1973 and Latney and Daly 1968 found that those from small towns are more likely to help others than those from big cities because they generally feel less urban overload, they don't feel as rushed, and they potentially experience more of a sense of community as well. This leads us to ask the questions, how can we prevent the bystander effect from happening, and how can we encourage helping behavior? According to Zan Wexler and colleagues 1992, a lot of it begins with the ways that we respond to distress in others when we are children, typically between the ages of 1 to 2. Response to distress is connected to the ways we choose to support or help others, and certain actions to distress in others can be learned by giving instructions. Grusik et al. 1978 suggests that by simply telling a child what is appropriate can form an expectation which is used as a later guide for action. Using reinforcement. Vaughan and Hogg 2014 report that Grusek 1991 suggests if certain acts are rewarded, then they are more likely to be repeated. If a young person is rewarded for offering assistance to someone else, then they are more likely to offer help again in the future. Also, we have modeling, also known as observational learning. According to Grusek and colleagues 1978, modeling is effective in shaping behavior because observing someone else helping an individual is a strong form of learning. For example, a child learning to help others by watching their parents help others in need. So the take-home message from all of this is just to be aware of the signs of the bystander effect. Now that we have been through how and why it occurs, as well as how helping behavior can be encouraged, all of you should now recognize the signs. Just simply being aware can help prevent the bystander effect from taking place. You can create an established norm within a group to help, rather than to not help, just by intervening. Vaughan and Hogg 2014 suggests that if you act like a leader, you can counteract diffusion of responsibility and effectively help someone. I hope this has been a useful and informing presentation for everyone here today. Thank you for your time and attention.